Hello, hello. I see everyone hopping on. Hi. I'm going to hit the wave button so I can wave back at each of you. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for joining. Hey, Caroline. I am going to wait on Sasha, who is our case manager, and she will be, hey Martina, and she will be on the live with us today. I got dressed up because a lot of us, as you know, are self-isolating, and I almost never, Navy or Marine Corps, hello, hello. I almost never get dressed up now that I'm in self-isolation and I don't really go anywhere. So forgive me if I'm using this as a moment to actually put some clothes on other than my pajamas. And it looks like Sasha just joined us. I am adding her. Let's see if it works. Hi, Sasha.
Hi. Good
Hello.
morning
Hello.
and afternoon.
Well, it's good morning for us.
Yeah.
Yes, good afternoon. Hello, hello. We have people joining in. I was going to give it like 2 more seconds. I see we both got dressed up. I was just telling you that
Yeah.
I got dressed up today.
It feels good.
You know, it feels really good to kind of get ourselves together a little bit, because I think that being in the house so much has forced me to just, I don't know, my pajamas not even looking even halfway decent is my normal. So I'm glad that we're able to use this as an opportunity to freshen up. I know my boyfriend is really liking the way I look right now because he's looking crazy those days. So
I spend a lot of time in leggings and sports bras. That tends to be my go-to.
yes, same here, same here. Usually my hair is all like this, and then I'm around with pajamas that don't match, socks that don't match, and I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yep.
But let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. I'll be popping in and out of our questions to just say hi and welcome people. Hit my little wave button. I don't really use Instagram Live often. I'm so excited to have everyone that's joining today. Just so you guys know, in case you can't stay on during the whole live, we are going to go through and save the video and post it onto our Instagram page as a IGTV video. And then we'll also be posting the Instagram, this IG Live to our Facebook page. So we want to make sure that people have access to this discussion, and that you guys are able to come back to it in case you need any additional information. But let's just dive right in. So I am Deshauna Barber. I am the CEO of Service Women's Action Network. I have been with the organization since, I think, January 6th or something like that, to be exact, was my onboarding day. So I'm very, very, very excited and honored to be the CEO of SWAN. I am an Army captain. I am in the reserve, and currently my position in the reserve is I am a cadre member at Howard University's Bison Battalion. So I train the cadets and the officers of the world, or the future officers of the country. So I am super excited. I'm 9 years in. I commissioned in 2011 as a logistics officer, and I'm also a full-time motivational speaker and a former Miss USA. So I've got a lot of stuff going on right now, and SWAN is a great addition to what it is that I do on a regular basis. So I'm going to pass the mic on to Sasha. And Sasha, you can introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. My name is Sasha Georgiades. I am a Navy veteran. I was a gas turbine mechanic while I was in the Navy. Stationed here in Hawaii. I ended up getting out and staying, obviously, because, you know, my other option was to go back home. And if it was between Oklahoma or Hawaii, I was going to pick Hawaii. So I have an undergrad in criminal justice and another bachelor's in psychology. I'm currently working on my master's in social work with a veteran focus. And I am the case manager at SWAN, and I have loved it. I can't wait to leave, just because I'm very excited for the next upcoming case manager. She's phenomenal, and she's going to do great things, and I can't wait to see where she goes within the organization as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, bad news to everybody. Sasha will be leaving us within a month or so.
Yeah.
bringing on a new case. Sasha has been with us since 2018, has done great work. So we're very excited for the new venture shifting to, and I guess we'll dive right into your military research work. And just so everyone knows, I've got my notes right here, so forgive me if you see my eyes turning over a little bit. But just to make sure that you all know exactly. Oh, hi, Brianna. Look at that.
I didn't know she was on there. Hi. Aw.
Amazing. Yeah, so if you guys look, it says Brianna Alexis 07. She will be our new case manager starting with SWAN in a few weeks. So Sasha's going to do a great job at training her. And yeah, big shoes to fill, but we have high hopes for you, Brianna, and we're excited to bring you on to SWAN. But diving in, so today's sexual assault awareness fireside chat is with Sasha, and she again has been our case manager since 2018. She's a Navy veteran. She's done amazing work. What we're going to be talking about today is military sexual assault, specifically some of the research that you've done for your final project for school, which is the military sexual trauma and institutional betrayal. So what would you say has drawn you to SWAN? Like what attracts you to the organization, and why do you think that it's so important what SWAN does?
What attracted me to the organization, actually, one of my professors at school was the one who told me about it when I had originally applied for an internship program and was fortunate enough to get placed with SWAN. That was kind of my first choice because I am very passionate about working with female active duty members, veterans, especially those that have gone through any sort of sexual trauma. So knowing the work that SWAN does in regards to females in the military is really what drew me towards SWAN and wanting to continue that and really learn from people who have been doing it for a while, and how can I continue to help, once I'm gone from SWAN, or how I can continue to help while I'm there was really what drew me towards it.
That's amazing. You know what I find about the organization and the people that have joined and become volunteers and gone on to become interns and hold positions is that a lot of us are in the military or have previously served. So we understand that there is an underlying shortage when it comes to access and when it comes to resources. So we have a connection to the mission and a connection to the vision of the organization. So it's really cool to hear that your professor is the person that has shifted you or introduced you to the organization, because before becoming CEO, I had no idea about Service Women's Action Network. And I think that that's what's great about this new chapter that SWAN is shifting into, is we're trying to make sure that people know who we are, and people know what the organization does. And I think that that's what's so important, because there is a lack of access. There is a shortage when it comes to making sure that women are exposed to the resources that are available to them, specific to them. So I think it's amazing to be able to hear that people are passing along that information. And for anyone that's watching this live, I definitely hope that you guys continue to not only support us as an organization, but if you know any women veterans or women service members, just say, hey, I just learned about this new organization, or not new, it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
I've just learned about Service Women's Action Network. If you ever need anything, go to their website. They're doing great things. So just so everyone knows that's watching this live and that's going to watch this video on Facebook and all of our social media channels, please consider to tell people about us, because a lot of people don't know about SWAN. And there's so many great things that the organization does that I believe will really, really, really be able to translate into the needs of women. So let's go on to the next question. In your experience as case manager working largely with the military population, what are the largest misconceptions surrounding sexual assault, either as a crime and or reporting behaviors?
That is a somewhat loaded question.
Yeah.
Because it's more than just the job that I've done as the case manager that I've seen. It's also through the research, which I know we'll get into, in a little bit, but my research as well has kind of exemplified the fact that most people don't understand why people don't report. Most people assume if there is an assault that you would immediately go and report, and that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of underlying factors internally and externally that are going on that are preventing people from coming forward. And again, that's something we'll get into with the research, because once I start on that soapbox, it's hard to get me back down off of it. But I realized people tend to think that if something happens to us, we're immediately going to report. People tend to think that we're going to be taken care of by our command, and that's not always the case. And then I think what I've seen the most through case management is working through these disability claims and trying to help survivors of MST get some sort of recognition for what they went through, get some sort of confirmation that what happened to them was terrible and we want to make things right. But that's not always the case. And sometimes dealing with the VA can re-traumatize these survivors. And I don't think people realize that part.
Absolutely. I think that even just to your point at the beginning of your statement, that when it comes to the dynamic of the military, and we all know this, is that we're all minority in itself, being women in the military, and we're dealing with the negative stereotypes and things that come along with wearing uniform as a woman. So you never want to internally, we always have this feeling that we never want to add another chip on our shoulder because there's so many there already. So I think that it's important for us, and that's going to caveat into the next question, is for victims of sexual assault, what resources can SWAN provide? Because we do need, victims of sexual assault do need to feel like they're safe. They do need to feel like they can trust their chain of command. And if in fact they can't, SWAN is always going to be a resource to them as a support system and be able to provide them legal options and advice and access so that they understand what can they do, what are their rights. But I will pass that question on to you. What resources can SWAN provide to sexual assault victims?
There's plenty of resources to provide. The one that I usually get asked for the most often is in regards to help with their claims, if it's been denied or if they're in the middle of an appeal. So we have different legal avenues, pro bono ones that we use, like the NVLSP is one that I tend to give out because it's a good one for attorneys that will take on these cases and help you in the middle of your appeal, help you file your disability claim. That tends to be one. But I've also gotten to the point where I've had women reach out to me looking for groups. They wanted group therapy sessions. So, I did a little research, was able to find, I believe this situation was in Texas, but I was able to find a group that wasn't necessarily at the VA that this woman could go to because she wanted to be surrounded by other survivors who understood what she was going through. So each veteran, or sometimes even active duty members that come to us, there's been times when I've reached out to the other people at SWAN and been like, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know who to send them to. Can you help me? And with active duty members, we have Lori Manning, who is great. And she is, has so much information. So she's been very helpful when it comes to active duty members, trying to get them steered in the right path to make sure that they're being treated correctly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's one thing that's great about the diversity of the organization is that we have, women from almost every branch, and we also have women that have a legal background, that are experts when it comes to government relations, experts when it comes to dealing with legal things. So that's always great that SWAN has that. Can you give us a brief overview of your research when it comes to military sexual trauma and institutional betrayal?
Yes. So I've been working on this honestly, probably since the last 2 years. I've spent my entire social work career. My first year was done lit review, just looking at research geared towards MST. And then my second year was gearing it towards my own particular research. So my research is covering military sexual trauma and institutional betrayal and the interconnection between the two, and how MST leads to feelings of institutional betrayal and how it can actually cause members to leave the military. And the other portion of my research that it looks at is really the training portion given to our service members, especially our junior service members.
Gotcha. And what exactly, by definition, would you say is institutional betrayal, and what does it do specifically to connect with military sexual trauma? I know you tapped on it a little bit, but what would we actually define it as when it comes to institutional betrayal?
Institutional betrayal is basically feeling like a command, or it's really, I rewind, it's more so seen in the military and in college, because you are dependent on this much larger structure to take care of you.
Right.
So when institutional betrayal happens, it feels like you are let down by someone that you are supposed to trust. So this big command, as in the military, I always tend to give what happened to me as an example. When I was assaulted twice in the military. The first time when I stepped forward to say, I don't know what to do, should I report? The response to me by my command was, he's a good sailor. Do you want to ruin his career?
Mm.
So that is an actual example of institutional betrayal, where I'm supposed to trust these individuals to take care of me, provide for me, and keep me safe, and then they don't. And so now not only have I been harmed by another service member, I've been harmed by my command at a much greater level.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. Absolutely. In terms of the not the betrayal itself, but the feeling of the slap in the face when you come forward and you're already in like a very low level space.
Yeah.
And the person or the organization that you're supposed to trust, that you're giving so much to, just completely doesn't dismisses everything about you and everything about your experience for the greater good, when in fact each sailor, each soldier, each Marine, all represent the greater good. And if in fact the climate within the organization is terrible, if in fact a person doesn't feel safe, that destroys the greater good, and all it create a toxic space for everybody. So one thing that's I think is important for organizations, especially the military, to consider is it is about the little guy. It is about that one person. It is about their experience, because these people go on to either stay within the military, or they leave, and they don't leave because they're not capable. They don't leave because they're not intelligent or they're unable to do the job. They don't leave because they leave because they realize that the organization is toxic and dangerous. So I definitely appreciate your being honest and being open to speaking about your experience. Um, what's the next question? How, if at all, does institutional betrayal affect reporting rates? And could institutional betrayal work in a different direction? As in, do you ever think it's possible for people to have such a strong trust in the military judicial system that survivors want to report because they trust the military justice system? Do you think that there's a way? Let's make it just two parts. Just for the part, it's a long question. I hope you understand. The first part of the question, we'll stick to that. Institutional betrayal affect reporting rates?
Yes, it does. And that is something that I have definitely seen through my research. The research that I was conducting was qualitative, so it allows members or whoever was replying to the survey to give their own stories, which I think is the best way to kind of research this topic. So when the question was asked, did you feel like you didn't have any support from your command? Did you feel like you were pressured not to report? And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. Mm-hmm. They felt like their command, some of them flat out told them don't report, some of them pressured them not to report. So it does impact these sort of reporting rates. And a lot of the answers said I didn't even bother with thinking about reporting because I knew my command would not be behind me. They had already made that known. So it greatly impacts the reporting rates.
Gotcha. And do you think, and make sure I get this question correctly, do you believe that institutional betrayal can work in a different direction, and the military or the person that is reporting will have such a strong trust in the military judicial system that survivors want to report because they trust the military? Do you ever think that it's going to come a point where there is that large level of trust?
I think it is possible, but it is going to be a large cultural shift within the military to get to that point. And that kind of leads into why I wanted to look at how training was done, because once you start shifting the culture, then you can start shifting how people respond to situations. So I do think it's possible, but I think that we need to start now. And I think that we need to start with our junior service members fresh coming into the military, because those are the ones who can start making the changes. Those are the ones that can start showing what is the norm for the incoming service members.
Gotcha. Absolutely. And from your research, do you think the passage of the Military Justice Improvement Act would make a huge difference in reporting numbers? And can you explain what, in case for those that don't know, what exactly the Military Justice Improvement Act is?
Right. So the particular part that that question is referring to is taking the ability to prosecute away specialized JAG unit. So then that specialized JAG unit.
Sorry, I think you're freezing.
Oh,
oop, is that my signal?
My back.
Sorry, start again. You froze up a few times. Sorry.
Oh.
Can you...
Yeah. No worries.
No, why?
Everybody's waking up and getting on the internet now. The particular part of the Military Justice Improvement Act that question is in regards to is taking the ability to prosecute away from commanders and giving it to a specialized JAG unit to investigate and then go from that point and see if they're going to go further. Do I think the passage of that would change things? Yes. Like, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. My day-to-day job here in Hawaii is working as a victim advocate in the Honolulu prosecutor's office. So I see the drastic difference between how the civilian criminal justice system handles sexual traumas, and then I've seen how the military handles it. The ability to have someone outside your unit investigate it, I think would increase the ability for people to report, because they wouldn't feel as much pressure from their command, and it wouldn't be as biased because it would be a specialized unit who does not know these individuals, does not work with them every day, and doesn't have some sort of relationship with them at all. And they're trained. And that's the biggest part, is these people are trained in how to investigate and how to know, and not necessarily, I know commanders get training and things like that, but it's not going to be to the same level that this JAG unit would be.
Absolutely. And there is a level of bias that comes within a unit. You feel like you have your loyalty and all these things. So it does make it a very, what's the word? I can't get the word out. The word is not toxic, but similar to toxic, where there are underlining alignments that it is bias. Different word I'm trying to come up with. I'm going to think on it for a second because I feel like my brain is shifting. What is the word? It's not toxic. It's not biased. Watch, you guys are going to see me on dictionary.com in about 2 ignore me. We're going to, but the word's going to pop up in my brain.
It'll come to you.
The next question, your research proposal mentions training as a way to possibly reverse and correct institutional betrayal. Is there a connection between sexual assaults and harassment training and decreased instances? So do you think that by incorporating more sexual assault training and harassment, is there any proof that it actually does affect the amount of sexual assault incidents within a unit?
Actually, yes. This research, the one that sparked my idea for this research was actually off of when I was doing my literature review for my first year of grad school. There was a research done, or a longitudinal study that was done with a particular unit, an Army unit, where they gave them more in-depth training, meaning that it was longer. It was treated more like a college class. They broke it up between genders and rank. And by the end of that study, I can't remember off the top of my head how long it was, but by the end of that study, those individuals were more likely to participate in bystander intervention, were more likely to even turn in their friend if their friend had done something, because they had linked the sort of values of the military with sex assault by saying, is it loyal to protect your friend who sexually assaulted someone, or is it loyal to the military to turn that person in so you have the strongest military available? And when you switched that and you aligned it with the values of the military, they had a better understanding and were more likely to stand up for other individuals. It didn't necessarily say if there was a decrease in sex assault within that unit, but there was nobody from that particular research group that sexually assaulted anybody else. And the thing that I always like to say is your frontal lobe is not fully formed until you're 25. You can't make a fully informed decision until you're past the age of 25. So when you look at these junior, I say sailors just because I was in the Navy, but these junior sailors coming in, they're coming in at 17, 18, 19 years old. They haven't had a whole lot of life experiences. Depending where you're coming from in the country, sometimes all you're taught about is abstinence. You're not taught how to give and ask for consent. You're not taught how to know when it is okay for someone to give you consent if they drink too much, you know, or if it's just, you have to even look at people's emotional states sometimes. So by looking at that study and kind of linking it all together, it showed that there is a decrease in people who are more likely to commit a sexual crime and an increase in people who are more likely to stand up for their fellow service members.
Absolutely. And our last question, and then we'll probably go through and look at some of the questions that people have asked on here. Is sexual assault prevention training broken in the military? If so, how can we fix it?
I don't know if I want to say it's broken. That feels like a very loaded response. I will say I don't think it's where it needs to be. From my time in the military, I remember it happening annually for an hour, and we would sit on the mess decks. And I remember one of the trainings, somebody kept making jokes behind me. And finally, I turned around and I had to tell them about themselves, and maybe not the nicest way, but it definitely got everyone to focus for the remaining of the training. No one said anything else. No more jokes were cracked. It was one of those moods where they're like, okay, so she's not the one, maybe we just keep it together while she's here. Yeah. So I definitely think there's a lot of improvements to be made. And the idea that I had when I came to DC for my legislative fellowship was extending the training and giving it to them in boot camp. Because if you're given the tools from the beginning, then you know what you're working with. If I'm telling you how to give and ask for consent, then you don't have an excuse later. You know, the information was given to you. So my idea was to have it for 4 weeks, an hour a week. So it's just 3 more hours. And each class would be something different. So one class we would be going over my favorite, how to give and ask for consent, how to know if it's okay. Another class would be going over what is sexual harassment, what is sexual assault, how do you know if it's happening? Because people tend to think that if I say sexual assault, it means rape. And that's not always the case. It can be a physical touch over and underneath the clothes. It can be someone telling you, if you don't do this, then I'm not going to promote you. If you don't sleep with me, then I'm going to do this, that, and the third. There's so many levels to this. And that's what I want to draw attention to. Another week would be going over survivor stories, because it showed how impactful it is for real people to tell their real stories and explain to them, this is what I have to live with for the rest of my life. In that moment that you assaulted me, that was, however long that the incident was, and then you get to go on about your day-to-day life, but I don't. I have to live with the after effects of the mental health issues that will be with me. And I say that because I've lived with PTSD for so long, and I've had to rewire my brain and rewire the way that I think and interact with people, because I only knew how to act in a way to protect myself. So by sharing these survivor stories, they'll understand how real it is. And then, of course, the class to go over how to report, the ways to report, what happens if someone's telling you not to, how can you counteract that, who can you go to outside of maybe that person right above you if you're trying to report. And by just lengthening it and giving them more in depth and making it a more humanized training instead of a death by PowerPoint, it will have a bigger impact.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, sorry, I hear something. I'm sorry, I don't know what that noise is. Can you like going crazy in Hawaii? No, so I definitely agree with that. And one shortage that I also noticed, because I do the same thing within my unit, I think it's pretty similar to the Navy, where there's a sexual assault and sexual harassment training once a year, which I don't think is enough personally. But there isn't much discussion on repercussions, like what happens if you do this. This is what's going to happen to you, or this is what we have the ability to do. These are the laws that are put into place. You could lose your career. You could be criminally charged. You could go to jail. I think that, and I don't want to say that I think that the military should turn to intimidation, but I do think that there's a lack of understanding of what happens if I am, if I do this and the person goes to their higher chain of command. This is what happens. So I think that a lot of the time people don't, or the person that's committing the assault doesn't understand that not only is this a human being, not only is this a person, not only is this someone that deserves my respect as my comrade, but this can also end my career. So is it worth it? Do I need to reevaluate what I'm doing? Do I need to reevaluate my plan? Do I need to take a step back and think about how this not only affects them, but how this is also going to destroy my life? But I think that people are so comfortable with it not impacting them that there is no accountability because they don't think that anything's going to happen and everything's going to be fine. Oh, my commander's going to look out for me. My XO is going to take care of it. And that should never be that. No. Every leadership team should get into the front and get into the front of the formation and say, if this happens, you can prepare for the end of your career. And a lot of people don't want their careers to end. And I think that personally, I think that will put a lot of fear in a lot of people's hearts to be able to, and honestly, the military, in my opinion, does that with everything, you know?
Yeah, everything.
If you don't pass your PT test, y'all are quick to tell me that you're gonna kick me out if I don't pass my fitness test. Okay? You're quick to tell me that if I go off the captain's career course, okay, and I fail, that my career's over. Yeah. So why don't we keep that same energy when it comes to assault? Why don't we keep that same energy when it comes to toxic work environments? Why don't we keep that same energy when it comes to things that may not necessarily be training related, but it has everything to do with our personal life? You tell us that you're going to kick us out if we get a DUI. We're very much quick, you know, in the military for people to be kicked out after drinking and driving, especially on base. People are terrified to drink and drive on base. So I think that same level of accountability, that same level of disciplinary action needs to be taken when it comes to assaults.
Yes.
And when it comes to discrimination and all these things that can be aligned with it. But that was just my little spiel. But there is a question in here from, I think Martina already answered it. But where'd it go? What is being done for homeless female vets with kids when it comes to finding housing? Thank you, Martina, for responding to that. Jan Lasco. Jan, I'm not sure if you're still on, but definitely go to our resource portal and you can look and find some homeless shelters, or you can find some housing resources that are specific to your state. So it's very difficult to answer that question because not every situation is the same. But if you go to our resource portal, you're able to look it up specific to your state. If you have any issues, just be sure to email us at info@servicewomen.org, and we'll be happy to help you and guide you and be able to find a resource specific for you. But we're doing a lot for that in terms of being able to verify organizations specific to each state for women veterans that are looking for housing or they're going through financial issues. It's one of those questions like that are very broad because every state is so different. Every organization may be specific to certain locations. So if you have issues, be sure to email us, and we'll definitely be sure to get back to you. Another question: is there greater support among women leadership or lesser institutional betrayal with women leadership? You know, that's a really good question. I mean, also, you can answer that. I'm gonna respond with personal experience. What's your opinion on that?
So to give my opinion, I will give a little backstory of my experience in the Navy. So like I said, I was a gas turbine mechanic. To let you guys know how tough that job was on women, I was on a pre-com ship, meaning brand new in the Navy, first crew. We were the ones that took it out to sea, sailed it from Bath, Maine, all the way to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. When we started, in my particular division, we had 5 females. When I got out, by the time my 4-year contract was up, I was the only one that did my full time on ship, meaning everybody else either got crazy or they had a mental health issue and could not stay on board. I had very little interaction with other females on board, and sometimes the interaction that I did have usually was not the best for me. It tends to be a little, in my experience, all I can say is you always want to be especially in engineering, it felt like you always wanted to be the woman that they liked the most. Because then you got the opportunities. Then you were the one that maybe wasn't getting harassed as much. Or maybe, if I would go to another engine room and ask one of the guys for a part, I would get it a lot faster than maybe if one of my other female counterparts had. Or they would, it was not always as easy. I did have one amazing, and Dominique Saavedra, she was part of the first group of women to go on subs, the very first female in naval history to get her dolphin pins. She's here. I love her. That's my mentor. She saved me. But I will say I didn't always have the greatest experience working with other women. She and maybe one other were the two that I could look back and go, they actually took care of me. They really cared about me.
Absolutely. And it is one of those things to where it's very crabs in a barrel sometimes when it comes to being the smaller group of an organization. So being the minority group. If there's 100 men and there's 2 women or 3 women, it's like, who can be the best woman when really we should be, locking arms together, and trying to push through the hurdles that we're both going to have to experience that no one else is going to be able to relate to. So just so I make sure I got the question so people know what it is there greater support among women leadership or lesser institutional betrayal with women in leadership? I personally think that it's the more diversity that we have within ranks, the more diversity that we have on the higher level of our leadership teams, I believe the less likely there is to have incidents of discrimination, incidents of racism, homophobia, or toxic leadership environments where you're ignoring victims. Because when you have diversity of experience, and you have people that have gone through certain situations that we would hope would make them more open to their experience and how they can make sure that no one ever has to go through what they're going through. That's what you would hope.
Yeah.
But I do also find, again, crabs in a barrel sometimes when it comes to women, that we really have to come together. And I think that oftentimes we do, but there are those few bad apples that wants to make this a competition. And there's also those few bad apples where, you know what, I went through all of this and I've gotten here, I'm stronger and I'm better. So you have to go through just as much as me to show me that you can make it to this level and that you're deserving of it. But the issue is that you should never have gone through all those things, and I think that that's a larger discussion. But just because one person goes through something and get to where they're at doesn't mean everybody needs to go through it. And when in fact you were done wrong by having to go through that experience. So I think that sometimes people use that as a justification to, this is why I'm putting you through all of this because it's what I went through. Oh. When in fact what you went through was completely unfair. So it can be one of those things where it's a little bit shifty, but I think that as women we have to work on coming together when we're in ranks. We have to stand up against the issues that happen within the culture of the military, because if we aren't going to call it out, then who will?
Exactly.
I think there was one more question. So true, there is. How is SWAN equipped to help both male and female survivors compared to traditional non-gendered military veteran organizations?
I mean, I feel like I helped them the same way, So our resources, technically, they're not usually gendered. I mean, some of the stuff that if I'm sending you to the NVLSP, that's just pro bono attorneys. They're not going to care what gender you are. I will say I've noticed that usually the men that call in immediately start off the conversation with, I know this is a women's organization, but, and of every time I talk to them, of course, you know, I'm going to help you regardless. I'm here for you regardless. I'll figure out what I can do for you. So we have resources that are not biased by gendered for the most part. There are a few that, you know, for just women's housings and things like that. But the most of the calls that I get in from men have to do with MST, and they're looking for support with their claim as well. I'll say that I think it's a lot harder for them to come forward and have this conversation, to let, especially a woman, know kind of what happens. Sometimes I get men who will tell me their whole story, and then sometimes I get men who are like, I'm not telling you anything other than this is what I need help with. So I don't honestly think we treat them any differently. It's primarily a women's organization, but if you're a survivor of MST, you're a survivor regardless of your gender, and our goal is to help you.
Yeah. And I think that's always important for people to know, is that we help everybody. It might have women's in the title of our organization, but we don't discriminate. And I think that we have a certain, we have an ability to sympathize and empathize with the experience, most of us. And there is a misconception that men don't have to experience sexual assault. They don't have fears of harassment, when it's just not true. There are those sharing experience, and there's the overlap when it comes to men and women within the military. And it's a shift in culture that we all have to embrace. Sometimes we assume that it's a woman's fight, but it's not a woman's fight. It's all of our fights. So I always think it's important to be able to break that stigma that this isn't a male problem too, and it's a female problem. It's an entire problem for everybody. So we all have to do what we can to break down break down the foundation of the military, to make sure that we're building it specifically on impacting the safety of people that choose to serve. So I want to thank you, Sasha, for taking the time for get on this live with us, and for everyone that's watching right now, and for everyone that is going to see it on the Facebook page, our IGTV. Just know that we plan to do this once or twice a month. I think that going virtual has detached a lot of us, so I want to use this as a way to connect with SWAN members and the SWAN community, and veteran community, service member community, and bringing us together and being able to have certain. So if there is a discussion that you all want to talk about, we're creative, but our creativity only goes so far. So if you have that you want to talk about, be sure to shoot us an email, shoot us an Instagram message or Facebook message. Hey, Deshauna, you know, I would love to hear about this, or I would love to hear about that. We're open to talk about a lot of things. I know I'm a talker, as you can tell me. I'm a talker. So I love talking, and I'm excited to be able to get on here and be able to connect with each of you. So thank you all so much, and be sure to keep up with us on all Facebook, Instagram, social media channels, all Service Women's Action Network. And if you want to check out our website, please go to servicewomen.org. And we're just excited to have done this for the first time, Sasha.
Yeah.
We broke through the glass ceiling, and here we are. So thank you so much, Sasha. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, everyone. I'm going to wave, and we will be posting this later. So thank you all so much, and enjoy your day.
Bye.
Bye.